All right, brand new tonight, we have even more text messages from Trump-hating FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Now, Senator Ron Johnson has put out a report that is raising questions about President Obama's potential involvement in Hillary Clinton's email investigation. President Obama's potential involvement in Hillary Clinton's email investigation. Now, during a September 2nd, 2016 exchange about creating talking points for former FBI Director James Comey to give to President Barack Obama, Page writes, POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. All right, so what exactly did President Obama want to be briefed on? Now, sources close to Strzok and Page, they're telling the Wall Street Journal tonight that this message they sent doesn't have to do with the Clinton email probe and instead was talking about possible Russian interference in the election. So, in light of the new Strzok text, well, we need to know what investigation did Obama want to be briefed on. That's why tonight we have two very simple questions for Barack Obama and, frankly, everyone else involved in this scandal. Take a quick look.
What did the president know and when did he know it?
All right, that was Senator Howard Baker. That was during the Watergate investigation, asking very important questions that President Barack Obama and others now need answers to. They got to answer to everybody. We did reach out to Obama's spokesperson. We didn't get a comment from all of them. And, by the way, shocking. Also tonight, there's a new batch of text messages that was just released from the Trump-hating FBI lovers, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. It highlights their investigative bias and, of course, their continued hatred of Donald Trump. On August 9th, 2016, Lisa Page writes, well, he's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And their hatred for Trump only grows from there. On November 3rd, 2016, only days before the election, Page wrote, well, the New York Times probability numbers are dropping every single day. I'm scared for our organization. And the Senate report notes this is likely a reference to the New York Times election forecast, which showed Trump gaining ground at that point in the election. Then on election day, November 8, 2016, Strzok then says, oh my God, this is blanking terrifying. And the next day, Strzok follows up with a, oh my God, I am so depressed. And a few days later, on November 13th, Lisa Page, pay close attention to this. Well, I bought all the president's men. I figured I needed to brush up on Watergate. And the following day, Page writes, God, being here makes me angry. Lots of highfalutin national security talk. And meanwhile, we have our task ahead of us. Okay, what task are they talking about? Now, Strzok and Page also called Trump an idiot, lonesome human being, talked about their insurance policy in case he won. So clearly, they were abusively biased towards now President Donald Trump. And here's what's very important. Peter Strzok, and to an extent Lisa Page, who was Andrew McCabe's legal counsel, they're at the center of everything in all of this. Now, Strzok was a former top intelligence official at the FBI and signed the documents, remember, to start the Russia investigation. To start the Russia investigation. Start the Russia investigation. And Strzok also played a key role in the Clinton investigation, even interviewing Hillary and helping James Comey write that exoneration months before the investigation. And, of course, by overseeing the interviews of not only Clinton, but also General Flynn. And by the way, he's the one guy who helped put the fix in, one of a couple. And that allowed Hillary Clinton to remain in this presidential race. Otherwise, very likely, if it was a fair investigation, she probably would have been indicted. And a new text message proves that on September 28, 2016, Strzok says, got called up to Andy earlier, who we think is Andrew McCabe, hundreds of thousands of emails, turned over by Wieners attorney to the SDNY, the Southern District of New York, includes a ton of material from a spouse, that is Uma Abedin. Wieners sending team up tomorrow to review. This will never end. Here's why this is important. According to reports, what's in the upcoming DOJ Inspector General report we expect next month is what caused Andrew McCabe to abruptly resign at the end of last month. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the FBI officials, top officials, including McCabe, they knew about Uma Abedin Wiener's emails that were found on Anthony Wiener's laptop in September of 2016, but they waited for at least a month before alerting Congress. Now, that text message provides very key true, but showing that Comey, McCabe, and others, they literally sat at a crucial moment on Uma Abedin's emails that were discovered on Anthony Weiner's laptop. On Uma Abedin's emails that were discovered on Anthony Weiner's laptop. On Uma Abedin's emails that were discovered on Anthony Weiner's laptop. Weiner's laptop. Now the question is why? And what took them so long to notify Congress, which they should have done? Now, the IG report is due out in the spring, probably in March, and hopefully those questions will be answered. Now, there are also other text messages from Strzok and Page that are raising a lot of red flags tonight. On May the 19th, 2 days after Robert Mueller was named the special counsel, Strzok was talking about joining the investigation with Mueller, and Strzok asked Page this question: an investigation leading to impeachment? Why are they talking about impeachment? Now, keep in mind, during that same text exchange on May 19th, 2 days after Robert Mueller was named special counsel, Strzok says, well, you and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concerned that there's no big there. So Strzok knew from the start that Mueller would be carrying out a witch hunt pretty much. There's also new revelations about former Attorney General Loretta Lynch and her involvement in the Clinton email cover-up. Loretta Lynch and her involvement in the Clinton email cover-up. In June 2016, Bill Clinton infamously, remember, meets with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac in Phoenix for 40 minutes, which caused Lynch to say on July 1st she's stepping away from the investigation and she would just accept the FBI's conclusion. Now keep in mind, all of this is before Hillary Clinton was ever interviewed by the FBI. So after Lynch's statement that she was taking a back seat, she would go along with the FBI, and James Comey, the same guy that she said, don't call it an investigation, call it a matter. Strzok then writes to Page, oh, timing looks like hell. And Page replies, yeah, that's awful timing. And then Page later adds, it's a real profile in courage since she, Loretta Lynch, knows no charges will be brought. By the way, they hadn't interviewed Hillary yet. And 4 days later, Comey holds his press conference right after they interviewed Clinton, and that was Strzok's interview, and they let Clinton off the hook. So Page, Strzok, Lynch, Comey all knew that Clinton wouldn't be charged, and the Obama administration, in fact, was rigging it, and the fix was it. And the Obama administration, in fact, was rigging it, and the fix was it. All right, also tonight, even more evidence that the FBI lied to a FISA court using that Clinton bought and paid for dossier to spy on the Trump campaign. Now, last night we explained in depth about the unredacted details in the Grassley-Graham memo. Here are the highlights if you weren't with us. Now, the phony dossier, in fact, did make up the bulk of that FISA application. And in March of 2017, James Comey, he briefed Congress that the FBI used the dossier in a FISA application because they thought Christopher Steele was credible. So Comey, he just trusted Steele. Why bother verifying it? He didn't. That dossier that they didn't verify was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. That dossier that they didn't verify was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. Now, the senators also accused Steele of materially misleading the FBI. Now, Steele was working on a second dossier. Remember we told you last night? And he, in part, this takes the cake, was being fed information from the Obama State Department and Clinton cronies, Clinton associates. Wow. So they're giving, literally, Clinton's friends are giving Steele some of the information he's using in that phony dossier, remember? But the rest of the information came from the Russian government, remember? But the rest of the information came from the Russian government, remember? He was saying the government was the source for the phony dossier material. Steele was briefing several mainstream media outlets, these lies and propaganda, in the summer and fall of 2016 about his first fake news dossier. And according to British court records, Steele talked to reporters, let's see, from the New York Times, Fake News, Washington Post, Yahoo News, New Yorker, and of course the old network, Fake News CNN. Remember? The old network, Fake News CNN, at the end of September 2016 about the dossier. And we previously uncovered that Fusion GPS co-founder, remember Glenn Simpson, he actually testified to a congressional committee that the Clinton campaign and the DNC were very aware that his company was contacting media outlets. They were coordinating, in other words, about the dossier, coordinating their efforts to leak these Russian lies, to leak these Russian lies, Russian lies. And also remember, the Senate report says the dossier, as we told you last night, full of information from the Russian government. Full of information from the Russian government. Wow, there really is a Russia collusion story. Hillary, Russia, collusion. Wow, there really is a Russia collusion story. It's a Russia collusion story. Hillary, Russia, collusion. And of course, there's the Republican House Intelligence Committee memo. Remember the highlights from that document? The former Deputy FBI Director, Andrew McCabe, revealed to Congress, without that dossier, the FISA warrant to surveil would never have been approved. Now, the FISA judge was, in fact, in this particular case, never notified that the dossier was bought and paid for, again, by the Hillary Clinton and the DNC, funneled through the same law firm, which, of course, is a huge problem. And we also know that James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Dana Vente, and Rod Rosenstein all approved surveilling in this particular case. Now, the FBI also used the Yahoo News article written by Michael Isikoff about the Carter trip to Russia. They were using it as separate and independent source to corroborate the phony dossier before the FISA judge, except the source for the Yahoo story was, of course, Christopher Steele. So the FBI never actually corroborated the information because Steele was the source of the dossier and the fake news story by Michael Isikoff. And we also know that no one ever verified what was in the dossier. And of course, the memo shows that Steele was, suspended and terminated as an FBI source for leaking to the press. Demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr had a close relationship with Steele. And remember, Orr is the guy who had an office 4 doors down from the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who would later appoint Robert Mueller. And Orr's wife, Nellie, want to talk about just coincidences in life? Oh, Orr's wife was employed by Fusion GPS, specifically working on the anti-Trump opposition research. Employed by Fusion GPS, specifically working on the anti-Trump opposition research. And Bruce Orr said that Steele said, quote, he was desperate. The author of the dossier, desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. And finally tonight, the memo finds that during the first FISA application for that warrant, corroboration of the Steele dossier was in, quote, its infancy stage. They never verified the Russian paid-for lies by Hillary and the DNC. So the FBI lied to a FISA court judge. They used a dossier full of Russian lies to spy on the Trump campaign just before an important American election. And America's powerful tools of intelligence were weaponized to spy on an opposition campaign during an election year. Now, the key people involved need to explain themselves.
And I'd have done it, too, if you kids had to come along. I'd have turned it if it wasn't for you.
I've gotten away with it, too. It wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
Blasted meddling kids.
And it would have been mine if it hadn't been for those meddling kids.
And I would have made millions if it hadn't been for you meddling kids.
Meddling young fools. They've gotten away with a king's ransom.
And I wish you'd have minded your own business. Well, in this case, it's police business.
We now take you live to the Central Texas Command Center in the heart of the resistance. It's Alex Jones.
It's Wednesday, the 7th day already of February 2018. We're going to be live here with my transmission for the next 4 hours. And there's more InfoWars transmissions coming up after that. There's so much to cover today, but there's a new talking point that Trump is turning America into North Korea. ABC News, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. And we're going to be breaking all that down today. Pence says the U.S. to unveil the most aggressive North Korea sanctions ever. And now North Korea officially says they fear a preemptive bloody nose. So that is going to be broken down today. Bull or bear, all eyes on the U.S. markets as they gyrate up and down wildly. That's coming up as well. But first, a report from John Bowen on the North Korea crisis.
Nobody really needs, as the opening ceremonies for the 2018 Winter Olympics are set to take place on Friday. U.S. Disarmament Ambassador Robert Wood told the forum at the Geneva talks that North Korea was only months away from attaining the capability to strike the United States with a nuclear-armed ballistic missile. Although Wood said he had no new information to share when asked about what he was basing his claims on. Wood also labeled North Korea's latest South Korean show of diplomacy as a charm offensive.
The situation on the Korean Peninsula has not changed. the regime continues work on its ballistic missile and nuclear programs. What I would call charm offensive, frankly, is fooling no one.
And now the DPRK is frantically warning that a preemptive bloody nose attack by the United States is imminent. Al Jazeera reported Young Chul said U.S. officials, including the Defense Secretary and the CIA Director, repeatedly talked about a DPRK nuclear and missile threat to justify their argument for a military option and a new concept of a so-called bloody nose. Meanwhile, Guam sits under the most imminent threat of an attack by the DPRK.
The people of Guam are proud to host the continued bomber presence and one leg of the nuclear triad with the recent addition of the B-2 and B-52 bombers. Considering the bomber presence and as the westernmost territory of the United States, Guam holds vital strategic bases, and I'm happy to see the department place a THAAD system to aid in its defense. However, in your strategy, you call for investment on layered missile defense from North Korean threats. Considering our strategic importance, is Guam adequately defended from theater missile threats, and how do you intend to bolster these defense systems in the future?
Well, we will continue bolstering them to keep pace with the threat out of North Korea. As you know, besides the THAAD system, and we also keep the Aegis, the ballistic missile defense, U.S. Navy warship in the waters out there, and we can always reinforce that. We also have several of those ships in Japanese waters right now, and they can move back and forth to include coverage of Guam in the mobile way that comes to our Navy. But we are looking at all the systems to include Aegis ashore as we look toward the future protection of our Pacific area.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I think we've talked about this. Just keep Guam in a secure position and keep all the bombers and everything else you have there for a while anyway.
And as the Winter Olympics create a veneer of diplomacy, a new U.S. ambassador to South Korea has yet to be nominated after the previous nominee, Dr. Victor Cha, will no longer be considered after he criticized the Trump administration's threats to back out of a bilateral trade agreement with Seoul. So how imminent is this threat? Well, The Hill reports last year the DPRK tested a ballistic missile that experts believe is capable of reaching the U.S. mainland, though the country isn't believed to be able to mount a nuclear device on the missile. Experts say North Korea is close, however, to reaching that milestone. John Bound reporting for Infowars.com.
We played the clip yesterday. I intend to play it again at the start of the next segment, with the president addressing a large crowd, threw down the gauntlet. And he simply said the truth. That the Democratic Party are the enemies of an American recovery. They are treasonous. And they're out to get the American people. And I was thinking about that line in that song, Lynn Greenwald, I think's his name, where he talks about proud to be an American. And the flag still stands for freedom. And they can't take that away. I remember growing up, hearing that and thinking, I love America, but that's a little cheesy. But as you get older, you learn that's how criminals operate. Is that once they get control, they want to take everything away from you. And modern liberals are just criminals. And studies show that.
I'll admit, I was wrong. What else can
Depending on the study, 6 to 9 times more likely. British, U.S. studies, Canadian studies, by liberal universities, by the psychology departments, that they're way meaner, give way less charity, and steal. And it's because they're weak. And so, when they get in positions of power, they seek to divide everybody, to control everybody, to dumb everybody down. because they feel weak and they want to manage them. So a leftist, a modern leftist, which is really just a mentally ill criminal with a psychology of crime, a twisted algorithm of sustaining themselves. They seek to play the victim at the low level, to guilt those around them under their control. It's really a sign of immaturity as well. It's an arrested development. Everybody knows spoiled, rotten children will try to guilt you into doing what they want. Everybody knows that spoiled, rotten children, when studied in the main, are the same around the world, that they hatch little plots and devious manipulations. Instead of just going out and boldly leading and being successful, and on its face, you got a pretty good idea growing up in school who's going to end up being steadfast, who's going to be successful, who's going to be stalwart, who's going to be inventive, and who's going to be corrupt, who's going to be evil. You can also tell who's going to fight, who the warriors are. And the system seeks to arrest the development of individuals so they can control them throughout their lives, like an English junior high eddy pool or groundhog day of control. So before we get into all this news, I thought it critical, absolutely critical, to talk about the psychology of these people, and just that line, the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. When I saw MSNBC and CNN and all of the different channels over and over and over again saying, you can't have a family, you can't have a church, and you can't like people that are in the military. And I can see the old American instinct to not want to have troops on the streets and not want to be under martial law. I certainly understand that. But they're saying you can't even have it. You can't even respect anybody that's doing that. Because, you see, it shows what globalist outsiders they are and how they're committed to overthrowing the country. And so we need the other side of that. After 18 years, since 1991, we've not had a military parade in this country. And Trump says the Russians have them, the French have them, the British have them. But see, as a globalist, George Herbert Walker Bush wanted to use our military to break up the Middle East and take over areas and start the clash of civilization, destabilization. But then he wanted to make it a UN operation and make our military itself shameful. So part of taking America back is having a wall, is having visas, is having sovereignty, and is supporting the men and women who've served in our military and who serve in it now, not because you're in a cult of worshiping the military, but because you understand the globalists want to take that away from you and demoralize the nation so we can be controlled. And everything Trump's doing is to stop the demoralization. And he's been critical of the NSA spying. And he's talking to William Binney, the CIA director, about a system that doesn't spy on everybody, that actually uses algorithms when somebody really travels here, really makes these statements, and then you have human intelligence and it's all integrated and it works 1,000 times better than scanning everything, which is really just used for political control. So I know for a fact Trump's even moving us in the right direction that way. And not wanting to have a bunch of nation building. And Trump was critical of the bill, but as they said, it was tied to whole spending, and he said, my hands are tied until we reform the system, because that's the system that is in place, hundreds of billions of dollars. And they've got my hands tied, saying tariffs are going to kill us in a minute if we don't turn this thing off. Well, we're moving to put something in that actually works from the original guy that actually built what became this monstrosity. William Benny. He's the engineer, the big mastermind. They admit, even his enemies, that developed all this, and they took it away and said, we're going to use it to surveil everybody. And he started saying, you're insane. Number one, that means you won't be able to track all the real threats when you look at everybody and everything constantly. All that is used for is total control. But Trump has a long way to go with surveillance, and he knows he's been targeted with it as well. But the idea that we can't even have a military parade to celebrate whether you support all these wars or not, how long these people have served, the longest serving military on average in world history. 20 tours, 30 tours. My cousin was in the Army, he's got extended 37 years. And was deployed for over 25 years in combat zones all over the world. Of course, volunteer. And wishes they put him back in, but his back's completely disintegrated. And jumping out of helicopters and carrying all his packs. It's about 6 inches shorter than when I was a teenager. It's just insane that you can't ever have that because the media said so. Just like I've got stacks of articles where they're saying you can't say mother and father, you can't say family, you can't say he or she. That hurts someone else who isn't a he or she. That's pure biological warfare. The globalists admit it's to target the family, which they said on MSNBC last week and CNN you can't have, and Trump shouldn't have talked about family. And Trudeau goes, we're people kind, not mankind. And that's just the beginning, you see, of how it starts. He's the prime minister putting out the soft pedal, but down at the school level, they're telling children in Canada, nationwide, they're doing it in spots here, that you're purple penguins. There are no boys or girls. Talk about trying to whack job people. That's how you depopulate, and that's even in the news. That's coming up. They admit, oh, transgenderism's great. There won't be any people. See, it's not about the transgenderism starts with men that want to be women or vice versa, and then it becomes transhumanism. That's how they set up the idea of you can't criticize giving up your humanity and identifying as a fire hydrant if you want. It's mainlining mental illness.